Same. I'm feeling the energy of Oya, the winds. Just I'm a lot of transitions and shifts, and so just trying to trust in divine timing and stay patient and trust in spirit. So I feel you. So
Oh, that's it. You gave the formula right there.
Ashe.
Hmm.
Well, happy to be here today. Hey, peace fam. We got Authentic African in the house, Melophonic.
Hmm.
Welcome.
Is there a way that you want to ground it today, Quinn?
I'll let you do it. You have the magic.
Oh man, all glory to the Most High and the ancestors.
Ashe.
Well, definitely just want to give thanks. Right now we're studying, the farmers, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives that focused on land and farming and tilling the land and putting our hands into the soil and digging up and bringing back nourishment for our bodies, for our temple. And, everybody eats. We talked about it earlier this week. Food is a big part of culture. So
Hmm.
let's give thanks to everyone who tilled, everyone who prepared the food. Like my family always say at the around the end of November, where Thanksgiving, when we have our celebratory family eating, it says, God bless the cook. All those who ain't ready, stand back and look. So we want to
Mm.
lift up all the big moms, all the pawpaws, all the uncles, all the aunties, all the sisters,
Mm.
all the brothers that tilled the land and brought up nourishment for our bodies and our temple in this time. Let's magnify them and lift them up on this day in a major way.
Ashe.
I say, Uncle Josh and that now, Hotep, amen.
Beautiful opening. Thank you, Brother Tut, for
All right.
the and for grounding us in the reminder that the work that we're doing now is us doing right by our ancestors and our predecessors. And talked a little bit about that. I was on a Black women's food advocacy panel last night, and that was a big topic that we were talking about because a lot of questions around how does racial justice and food justice go hand in hand. And
Mm,
as we see through this book, through the history of cooperatives, we see the intersectionality of race, but also class, land justice, food justice, and they all fold into each other. So,
appreciate that. Man, I wish I would, man, you should have put the post out so we could have watched or supported that
oh,
panel.
I'll try to share the link, the recording when they send it out. But Ashe, thank you. Yeah, it was a beautiful gathering. So, give thanks for that space. Candace Elder from the East Oakland Collective was on that panel. So that
Okay.
was awesome. What's up, Ambitiously Imperfect? I see you in here. Hey, Mama Mia. Alrighty. So in the spirit of land liberation, of food liberation, we'll jump right into it. So I think we're on the bottom of page 99. Am I on the right page?
Yes, that is the correct phrase.
All right. So we're just going to briefly talk about a note about the Southern Cooperative Development Fund. So in 1970, the FSC and the Southern Cooperative Development Program were joined under the FSC. But Father McKnight, who was previously mentioned in the past sections, separated from the FSC. And we'll talk about him a little bit later. But in 1969, the FSC worked with the Ford Foundation on feasibility of establishing a developmental loan and equity fund. And
Mm,
that the feasibility study recommended that the development of a separate corporation be called the Southern Cooperative Development Fund. So that's the SCDF.
mm,
And that would be a subsidiary of the FSC with a partially overlapping board of directors. So funders thought that those two should be separated. And as we move into the next page, this section talks a lot about the stipulations around funding provided by outside entities, right? Um, so at first, we're at the top of page 200. It says, since the Southern Cooperative Development Program was coming to an end, the FSC board designated Father McKnight as the director of the fund, the SCDF.
so,
loans from the SCDF were originally restricted to member cooperatives of the FSC. That later changed. And in the next section, they talk about how the political climate of the Nixon administration also provided barriers and challenges for the FSC and the FSCD getting funded. It says, according to the FSC/LAF, the OEO, and I think that was, I forget what the acronym stood for. Do you remember, Brother Tut?
Man, what was that?
I had just seen it when I was looking this over. It's the Office of something. It's a government entity. Anyway,
yeah.
So the OEO started requiring external evaluations of the cooperative development programs if they were to receive funding, right? So we kind of see that still continuing today with nonprofits and grant reporting, right? So you have to sort of prove to these funders and justify to these funders, you know, that you deserve to continue to get funded. And a lot of the times you have to kind of be in alignment with what they want to see, and sometimes that takes away from your own mission.
No question. And it also makes you compete with people that's doing a similar work.
That part, it perpetuates that crabs in a bucket mentality that we have. We're like pitted against each other.
Yeah.
But we're all working towards the same common goal. We call that the nonprofit industrial complex.
That's something. Bo finally says crazy funders made them separate. Yeah, the Ford Foundation had a big part of that to do with that, man.
Right. We see these big corporations, like with the roles they play back then and the roles they still play today, and the positioning that they have in charity or foundation work. Right.
Hey, you know what? That made me think about Chevron in Richmond. Like, I talked to the folks that's doing the work on the ground in Richmond. Chevron gives buku bunches of money to folks that's not even connected to the work, and they show up and like do similar things like out of nowhere, bro. And just the funk is still prevalent today.
Definitely. They try, and like as we see in this book, like they'll try to move in their people. Yeah, like you just said, instead of giving support to the folks who are rooted there and are already doing the work and have been doing the work. We see similar things out here in the East too. Okay, so it said that continuing down to page 200, I won't spend too much time on this section because I really want to focus on the accomplishments of the FSC. But it says FSC board joined other OEO funded cooperative development programs to oppose the evaluation. So they actually did organize to submit applications without having to go through the evaluation process, the external evaluation process. So that was Ford Foundation sending their own people in to evaluate these programs, right? The OEO negotiated instead with Father McKnight separately, right? So they and he was the director of the SCDF. So as we see, like the siloing within the organizations also kind of contribute to the co-opting of these co-ops. And funded the SCDF, but not the FSC, right? So we see why that division was important from the external forces. And this changed the focus. Funders pushed for separation, and this split the SFCD board of directors, but the SCDF, did not vote to accept the money. At the same time, the Ford Foundation changed the focus of the FSC's new grant away from broad regional cooperative development and
Oh man, Queen, You paused on our end. I thought you was gonna probably slide back.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah,
Hello? Can you hear me?
yeah, we can hear you back now.
Okay. My bad.
So,
So where was I? Yeah, so talking about how these the folks with the money tend to hold power for decision making, and we see that presently, and we need to start to shift that. For example, like EB Prec, if you were to go and look at their website and look at their different models of membership, investor membership doesn't get the same decision making power as the folks that are actually on the ground doing work in the community. So that shifts the idea of how we view um, folks who invest dollars, right? So no matter how much money you put up, you still don't get a vote. You know, your work is worth more than your dollars, and we have to start shifting back into that.
this is up.
Yeah. So to cap this this section off, we're gonna move into the top of page 201. Dr. Gordon Nemhart comments that the forced separation of the SCDF from the FSC and the creation of the rival Southern Development Foundation caused a serious split in the Black cooperative movement in the South. The FSC/LAF's 1992 report concludes, many of us in the cooperative movement feel that the funding sources, for their own reasons and interests, conspired to drive a wedge into the growing unity and development of the cooperative movement in the South. So it's clear. It is clear in retrospect that some way should have been found to overcome these conflicts and outwit those who sought to diminish or possibly to destroy the power and influence of a united cooperative movement.
Boom, drop the mic.
Right. We talk so much about in these sessions for about how this is the Black print, but we are the ones that need to go and do the renovation. And so these are some of the renovations we need to be looking at making, right, to strengthen structure in the building.
Okay.
All right. So we're gonna get into the fun stuff. Moving down into the FSC accomplishments. So there were a lot of accomplishments that the FSC made, and they still exist to this day. I actually just got a newsletter from them that they're having their 53rd annual gathering this week, actually. So tap in federation.coop if you want to learn more about them. But it says that in the 60s and early 70s were significant cooperative development, were a time of significant cooperative development among Southern Blacks. And we can refer back to that timeline and see it captured in more of a snapshot. And also it'll help us put it to historical context more. What was happening in the 60s and early 70s, not only in the South, but just around the country. The infusion of public money was important because many Black farmers were quite poor and small family farms were being displaced by large corporate agriculture. The consolidation of education and other technical assistance to African American cooperatives was also important and allowed for the proliferation of cooperatives. Right. So education, the education piece is huge. And while public and private grants help develop and support agricultural cooperatives, these grants, of course, as we just talked about, came with strings attached. And that was part of the reason why of the undermining of the unification and the trust that was built within these Black cooperators. So in 1985, the FSC and the Emergency Land Fund Association merged so as to better protect Black land owners. At the time that this book was written, Ralph Page became the executive director and continues to serve in this capacity. So I'm not sure if he's still in that role today because it's been a little bit since this book was published. But that would be interesting to see who's in leadership there. And to wrap up this page, this paragraph starts to name numbers, right? And this is where it gets exciting. The FSC/LAF has held together a membership of what has sometimes been more than 100 cooperatives, credit unions, and community-based economic development organizations involving 25,000 mostly Black, rural, and low-income families. And this includes some 10,000 family farmers who own 500,000 acres of land. That's crazy. Their budget grew from $547,473 in 1970 to about $3.1 million in 2001 to $3.5 million in 2010 to 11. So that's about so we can be interesting to go and look up to see what 10 years later presently looks like today. Excuse me. Oh, and it mentions at the bottom of the page with 3.5 million in total assets, its annual budget in the 2000s was roughly 3 million. 47-year history going into page 202 and its state associations of cooperatives. Again, it's mentioned that they've developed and assisted hundreds of cooperatives, credit unions, community-based economic development projects in 14 states. So that's a lot. Currently, there are 75 active members of the at the time this book was written, and the organization helped start 5 new co-ops and held more than 90 workshops, conferences, and board trainings. So continued education and cooperative development. In the middle of this page, it also lists the 6 goals of the cooperative or of the FSC/LAF's programs, which are still upheld today. And we can also look at the ways that they design their goals to find alignment with work that's already been done too. How can we support each other and not take away from each other's work? Mm-hmm. All right, so some key things that the FSC and LAF did also was state and federal policy advocacy. So to support Black farmers, to support Black land retention, cooperative development of ag policies, the farm bills. So they also had a stake in certain political spaces. It also talks about here a little bit that they provide legal advice to members and the community about land retention and rights, which is so important to the Black community, especially in the South, because we hear, there's so much history of land grabbing and violent land removal, and also, just generally taking advantage of folks who may not be versed in the really ambiguous legal jargon that is associated with these different land stipulations. So having that legal technical assistance is huge, because oftentimes not being, having these laws and legislations written in a way that we don't understand them, or isn't easy to digest for folks, they can easily take advantage of us, and that's how we see so much Black land loss throughout history.
And Melafana says the FSC currently has Shirley Blakely as president and Cornelius Blanding as executive director.
Right on. Thanks, Brother Greg. So their current director is a woman?
Yep.
So shout out to the queens out there. Hey.
Always, man. You know what I'm saying? And you was getting crazy love when you was talking the points about people land grabbing and the importance of coming together.
Right. And they also organized. Oh, so I also want to read this section towards the bottom of page 202. They also became a networking organization and coalition builder, right? Working with rural coalitions, small farmers, organic farmers. So the networking piece is also huge. And the East Oakland Grocery Co-op team, we actually were able to do a guest speaking session with Dr. Gordon Nemhart this past weekend. And one of the things that she
was driving home with us was the when we asked her about the resilience of co-ops and why co-ops, she really drove home the networking piece and the community, the trust piece of going back to those ways of being a village again, right? And if for some reason someone needs support or can't meet the needs of the group, the group comes together and supports that person, right? So we need to start to think about each other in that way. And as we see, like some of the most successful co-ops really drove home education, really drove home these networking, these spaces for coalition, the spaces for having conversations and development discussions. So that's really important for us to do. Like these book clubs and these interactions, these are the stepping stones to get us to the bigger vision. Of course, following Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the FSC developed an emergency relief capacity and replicated the Farmers as First Responders program to provide hurricane survivors directly with fresh produce as soon after a disaster as possible. So here we see mutual aid coming in, right? We see that now during the pandemic as well, not only with our Black farmers, but just folks who are able to pull together their own dollars to create mutual aid funds, supporting folks to pay for their rent or to purchase food for their families.
Mm.
And so going down page 203, of course, through the education, FSC/LAF provided services through leadership. They've saved family estates, reduced farmers' costs, increased revenues, and enhanced stability for members, producer, marketing, consumer, and credit cooperatives. And taught technical skills to hundreds of people. So when Dr. Gordon Nemhart was doing this research, she mentioned that it was impossible to calculate the worth of all these services because there were so many indirect and informal services and benefits attached to the work that was being done. And these other services and benefits were leveraged from the direct services. So there was many intangibles and things that were just hard to track, right? A rough estimate of the monetary impact of the first 40 years of the FSC beyond its direct calculable services is more than $500 million.
Okay. Man.
Just sit with that for a second.
Half a bill.
Man. All in Harriet's, yo.
You know what I'm saying? And that's work, man. That's work. A lot of people touched that 500 million, man, and benefited from it. That's what's up. Not just one person or a family, one family, 1,000.
And it shows us that it can be done. Like this type of wealth building can be done. I mean, Black dollars are the most frequently circulated, dollars in this nation, right? So who's to say we can't get back to this and more? Because this was how many years ago?
Over a decade, probably.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They also, in the first 40 years, leveraged resources worth 5 times the amount of direct funding raised. So that's more than $50 million. They facilitated savings of more than $34.7 million by 16,155 people in member credit unions. Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And have made more than 79,000 loans to low-income folks, totaling more than $239 million.
I love that part.
Man, that's amazing. And this is the stuff about our generational wealth building that we don't hear about. We only hear that, oh, we don't have generational wealth, or we can't build generational wealth, or we have all these barriers, instead of looking at success stories, which is another thing that Dr. Gordon Nemhart mentioned, was that when we talk about cooperatives and we also look at the history, speaking to resilience, a lot of the times, even if the co-op fails, quote unquote, there's always successes highlighted of sparking education, of changing the lifestyle within the membership, right? So it goes deeper than just starting a business, right? And there's so many more takeaways that you get. So that's something we got to remind ourselves too, is that it's not the end all be all if we try something and something fails. Like, we're constantly students of life, and we're learning, we're always educating ourselves. Okay, let me wrap this up, because I know this is a big section. So let's see. I'm just going to keep going through some of the statistics and numbers here. So in the middle of page 203, the FSC has facilitated $80 million in sales through cooperative marketing, created $26 million worth of housing units, and saved more than $200 million worth of land.
Mm.
I'd be interested to look at a map and see where exactly those acres of land were located within the country. And over time, it has employed and trained over more than 500 people. Many former employees of the FSC LAF have gone on to work in positions of significance in the region, becoming members of Congress, legislators, school board members, program directors, right? So again, that was the piece that I just mentioned, so that there's so many takeaways of being involved in this cooperative world, right? You don't necessarily, have to be a part of a cooperative in that space and time, because as you're learning about it, right? People take away and they go and serve community with the foundation of cooperativism, as we see Mama Ella Jo Baker, right? I think it was Dr. Gordon Nemhart as well who mentioned that she firmly believes that SNCC and all that organizing for civil rights wouldn't have happened without Ella Jo Baker's grounding in the cooperative movement.
Mm. That's on point.
Right, and we see the same thing with Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer too, right? She's known for political organizing around the Black vote, but her work is so deeply rooted in cooperativism that you can't help but see the correlation between the two.
Mm.
So finish up this page. At the last paragraph, it says that the FSC/LAF's land retention activities have allowed members not only to keep control over inherited property, but to make a living from farming, engage in sustainable agriculture, branch into alternative crops, increase their farm income, and decrease their off-farm income. So, we're taking back ownership. We're taking with ownership of the land, with being able to retain own our ownership of our land. That just provides so many pathways for liberation through food, through education, through creativity. If we have a land base to do those practices on, without anybody telling us what to do on that land or having any hold over that land, that's those stepping stones to freedom. Alrighty, fam. So page 204 wraps up the section. And we talked about many of the highlights that as mentioned in this last paragraph. So I'm gonna close it out there. But really the biggest takeaway here is cooperative ownership provides meaningful, steady, profitable work, access to financial services, human capital development, and a panoply of increased opportunities.
Mm.
So cooperative ownership, not just it's so intersectional. This was another thing that Dr. Gordon Nemhart was talking about in terms of wealth building and building prosperity within the Black community. One of the reasons she firmly believes co-ops can do this is because it provides all these intersections. A worker cooperative provides, steady job creation. It also provides opportunity for business equity. You can, if it's a grocery co-op, you control food flow, right? That supply chain. You have the freedom to source from Black farmers and Black vendors and Black business makers to then give and sell to your community, right? So it's very like full. Wraps up this chapter.
Man, dropping that knowledge. So,
I mean, it's all Dr. Gordon Demhart. I'm just preaching the word, you know.
yeah, Pastor. Go ahead.
Maybe we can ask her if she can like guest co-host the IG live with us when the book club is done. That'd be dope.
That'd be hot.
Right.
Get that out into the universe.
Hey man, it's the cooperative network. We just gotta tap in. All right, fam. Well, we'll be back at noon tomorrow, same Black time, same Black place, picking up on page 204. And we only have like a week and a half left of this book club, Brother Tut.
That's it, man. It went through 12 quick.
Man. Well, thank you all for always showing up and being present, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Most definitely. We'll check y'all tomorrow. Much love. We'll be live on YouTube tomorrow. And we are working with some family, some queens right now directly. So we'll open up the opportunity in a few weeks to people send their ideas and DMs, and we'll work with you directly.